Welcome back, America. Eric Bott is the state policy director at Americans for Prosperity, a great sponsor of our show. Eric, good morning. We've been talking about housing this morning with Larry Hogan, with a bunch of people. Did you hear Kamala Harris's latest ad? Did the folks at Americans for Prosperity pass out when they did?
Well, I'm not sure which one you're referring to, but I've heard a number of Kamala Harris ads, and I tend to want to pass out after hearing most of them.
Okay, let me hit you with one. This was from yesterday. It's on housing, cut number 20. Yesterday's
For most
new
of my
ad.
childhood, we were renters. My mother saved for well over a decade to buy a home. I was a teenager when that day finally came, and I can remember so well how excited she was. I know what home ownership means. And sadly, right now, it is out of reach for far too many American families. During the foreclosure crisis, I took on the big banks who exploited people in the housing market. And today, corporate landlords buy hundreds of houses and apartments, then turn them around and rent them out at extremely high prices. I will fight for a law that cracks down on these practices. We will end America's housing shortage by building 3 million new homes and rentals. We should be doing everything we can to make it more affordable to buy a home, not less. I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
Okay, Eric Bott. I was a land use lawyer for 30 years. I'm retired. There is not one true thing in that ad. There are many false things in that ad. What do you, as a state policy director for Americans for Prosperity, think about that?
Well, first off, that ad angers me. My father was a self-made contractor who taught himself how to build homes and brought our family up out of poverty through that. That ad's frankly insulting. Government does not build homes. Entrepreneurs build homes. And the problems with home ownership in America today all stem from government. We have solutions. We have supply-side solutions where we can reform land use, we can reform zoning, minimum lot sizes, building codes, impact fees. All these things are going to provide an opportunity for the market, for entrepreneurs, for small business to fill the gap and fill the need that people have to own a home. And this is critical because home ownership is a quintessential part of the American dream. But what Kamala Harris is proposing to ignore all of the solutions we know are before us, to ignore all the problems that we know are causing these things, and just give people $25,000 as she's proposed if they're building a new home, that's only going to raise the cost of housing by $25,000. It's not.
I've explained it. It's one market. It's a national market. It's one market. Every house price is connected, and the government does not build houses. The government obstructs the building of houses. And for 30 years, I would beg at the local, the state, or the federal level for the permits necessary for my clients to build houses. Eric, I'm astonished sometimes at the lengths to which Democrats will lie. That's just a set of lies.
There's a tremendous amount of that happening right now, unfortunately. We see that with this administration. We see it with this campaign, where they are telling each particular constituency the thing they want to hear, even when those things directly contradict. We hear it a lot on the cost of living right now. And it's frankly, it's bonkers. We know the root of the problem. You know, it's the Biden-Harris administration printing money and creating a huge supply glut of currency in the market. That drives up demand. But we can't meet that demand. We can't meet the demand for supplies. We can't meet the demand for services. Why? It's because of the regulatory burdens that the Biden-Harris administration is putting on business in this country. So as people want more things, they can find fewer and fewer things to purchase, and we end up with these incredibly high costs of living that people are just struggling with today.
You know, if the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the Army Corps of Engineers, and the EPA got out of interfering with housing construction, the number of new units would triple in any given year. But they're not going to get out. They're going to get worse. At least, Kevin, I think it is, Eric, it is fair for me to say every bad thing that happens to the housing market is going to get worse under a Harris presidency because she's the most radical left-winger who's ever run for the presidency. Do you agree with me or disagree?
I would say, but I've heard very little from her on the policy front that gives me any optimism for her plans. And on the alternative, I do hear some conservatives talking about supply side reforms, regulatory reforms that will make things better. So I'd have to agree with you.
All right. So last question. What is AFP doing in the election? It's nonpartisan, but it's got grassroots everywhere. How are the grassroots growing and how do people get involved?
So AFP and our sister organization, Americans for Prosperity Action, are heavily involved in a strategy, particularly AFPA, a strategy to firewall the U.S. through the U.S. Senate. And so we're the largest organization on the ground, canvassing, talking to citizens, talking about these issues that really matter to them, and making sure that people understand what's at stake in this election. States like, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Montana, these are the states that are going to determine the future of this country for not just the next 4 years, but probably the next generation. So we have built up tremendous armies of grassroots activists in these states. They're out there grinding on the pavement every day, trying to make this thing happen for America.
If someone wants to enlist in Americans for Prosperity, just go to americansforprosperity.org.
Absolutely. You can find
That's it.
Contact with your local chapter. Yes, sir.
americansforprosperity.org. Get involved in that firewall, because we need it in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Wisconsin, Michigan. We need it in Arizona and Nevada. We need it in Georgia, North Carolina. That's americansforprosperity.org.